Okay, let me catch you up. In a recent video, I walked into CEX with a £10 note and came out with 4 games. If you've seen that video, awesome, you know what's about to happen. If not, these are the games I picked up. So for as far back as I can remember, people have been recommending this, the Callisto Protocol. Apparently it's a game I would enjoy. It came down and down and down in price until finally at £6 I decided to pull the trigger and spend some of the cash on it. Now, it goes into the collection alongside 3 other games I picked up, all of which are on the Xbox 360. There wasn't really any method to this, it was just a case of what games I didn't have in the collection that kind of added up to that £4. So the first of which is going to be Medal of Honor Warfighter. Then we have BioShock 2. They actually have a special edition of this in my local CEX right now. You get like a vinyl and an art book and stuff, but it's like 50 odd quid, and I don't care enough to be spending that much money on it, so just the standard edition for me. And to make up the final pound, I picked up Red Faction Armageddon. Of course, there are a couple of others on the platform I need to pick up, but they're all very, very cheap. And as that was £1 and that's all I had left, it made sense. 4 games I didn't have in the collection that we're going to put into the collection, and we've only spent £10. I'm sure I'll get the questions. I thought you were saving the cash for this, that and the other, and I am, but when it comes to just walking into CEX with 10, 15 quid, I used to do it a lot, and I had a lot of fun doing it, trying to stick to a budget, trying to think of games you don't own that you'd like to play. And of course, as a content creator, it means I can split it up into 2 videos. I can do like a budget spend video for CEX that is completely separate to the series, and then in the series I can quickly catch you up with what I've spent, show you the games, and we can move on. So in terms of figures, I'm going to deduct £10 from the overall. Speaking of figures, in the last episode I picked up a couple of games on Vinted. I deducted the cash, and I don't think I added the credit on because I hadn't traded them in yet. If I have, then I will update the figures accordingly. However, they traded in for just a little bit more than I thought. So I'll pop the receipt on screen for you so you can see in detail, but essentially I got £6 for The Last of Us, £4 for Lego Movie 2, and £12 for Little Nightmares, as opposed to the 10 that I thought I was going to get, because waiting an extra day has paid off. Not that I did it intentionally, but it went from 10 to 12. Side note, for those of you who remember, the exact same CEX store, there was a member of staff who refused to take Lego Movie 2. Well, they took it this time, no issue, because different member of staff. Competent member of staff. I did take a trip to several charity shops. A few of them had video games, the majority of which were just fodder. A couple of PlayStation 3 games that weren't terrible, you know, like Uncharted and the likes, but unfortunately they were just not necessarily a little bit too expensive. But I mean, I'm not collecting for PlayStation 3, so it's not something that I'm interested in. Of course, if you were in the market for them, maybe they would have been worth it, I don't know. I did find some 360 games here. Gears of War was the only one worth looking at. It was a bundle copy. I don't know how much it was. I don't think I need it, so I walked away from it. And then the final charity shop that I went to had a few Xbox 360 games, but they were all Connect games that I literally couldn't care less about. The Disneyland experience, perhaps I would have gone for it, but decided against it. And then of course a load of PS3, but it was all FIFA and Pro Evo, which of course nobody wants to pick up, so again I walked away empty-handed. So as the title suggests, this is a very CEX heavy episode. I know a lot of my videos tend to be based around CEX, but today we're basically only going there. In that video where I picked up 4 games for £10 in CEX, I actually spent some voucher as well. So the games I picked up then I'm about to show you now, but then I went to a completely different CEX and I hit somewhat of a gold mine, and again I will show you that later in the video. Now I already had a decent amount of voucher to spend in this series. I had around 20 quid in my mind that I wanted to spend. If I'd seen something there that was 40, 50 quid that I really wanted, I would absolutely have plunged some voucher into it because that's what it's there for. But not that long ago, I went into the Cardiff CEX and I picked up Castlevania 2. It was a promotional copy, which, side note, if you don't watch this regularly, you should know that I collect promotional copies of Xbox 360 games. Now, I say that as if I don't collect normal copies of Xbox 360 games. I do, I collect the whole thing, but I specifically look for promo copies. Where I find them, I will buy them 9 times out of 10, regardless of what they are. Now, with that being said, my local CEX didn't have a promotional copy of Castlevania, the first one, but they did have a normal copy, and it was £10. And I decided it was a pretty good idea that I pick that up. So £10 of the credit I have spent on Castlevania Lords of Shadow, non-promotional copy on the Xbox 360. It does come complete with manual, just in case you're interested, although the manual is a little bit tatty, not gonna lie. And the next game I picked up is one that I've been looking at for a while. I didn't know an awful lot about it, and having watched a couple of reviews, I'm not sure whether I'm going to enjoy it or not, but the art style of it looks absolutely fantastic, and that's kind of what makes me want to play it, as well as the subject matter to a certain extent. This is Trüberbrook. It's like a point-and-click puzzle adventure game set in an alternative sort of Germany 1960. It's very sci-fi-esque. In fact, the creators took inspiration from the X-Files and Star Trek, which are two things that I'm very interested in. I'm not sure how I'm going to get on with this, if I'm being perfectly honest. Apparently a lot of the puzzles can be very confusing. You have to do them in order, and they don't tell you what order you need to do them in, etc. So I may have to look up some sort of guide in order to get myself through this. However, it does look really interesting. This was £12. I believe, unfortunately, this has gone up recently. I think it was 8 and now it's 12. So I have kind of overpaid in a way. However, this is a game that, like I said, I've been looking at picking up for a while. I saw it on the shelf and I thought, well, what's the harm? Let's pick it up, give it a go. If I don't like it, I can sell it, I can trade it, or I can just leave it on the shelf as a reminder not to pick games up on a whim. Although saying that wasn't really a whim, because as I mentioned, I've been looking at that game for well over a year at this point, and I thought today was the day. Now, with that being said, I went to a different CEX and I managed to pick up a fair few games. I wouldn't necessarily say ones that have been on my list. In fact, only one of them is technically speaking on my list, but the rest of them were kind of must pickups, and I'll show you why. I like to set like targets. I'm not doing that today, but I will say if you do hit the like button on this video, it helps me out more than you can ever know. It lets YouTube know that you like the video and other people might like it as well. So if you are enjoying it, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really does mean a lot to me. For those interested, this is the Swindon store. If you're from Swindon, you have my sympathy. Now, I didn't have an awful lot of time to look around here, but I did have enough time to flick through the 360 games and notice this. This is Blur, 15 quid. Can't quite believe the price on this one. This was like £4 not that long ago. Now, luckily, I picked it up a while ago, so I didn't pay anywhere near that. But 15 quid for Blur? Crazy. If you haven't bought that yet, unlucky, because that is a crazy price. I noticed they had a Castlevania, which probably had a better manual than the one that I had. Now, this store, as I mentioned, have an awful lot of Xbox 360 games, but it's not a particularly big store. And they don't really have the room to facilitate all the 360 games. So it looks like they've tried to do their best in displaying these games up until you get to the last bay, which I will show you in just a second. But the last bay, that's where I find the gold, baby. So I'm flicking through. You know what I'm looking for. It's boring, but it's promo copies. I did want this. I was going to buy this. I had a quick look online. I cheated. I had a look online to see what they had in stock before I went there. Godfather 2 is a game I love. I haven't really played the first one much, if I'm honest, but the second one is fantastic. But it's a reprinted cover. Wasn't going to buy it. I started flicking through. I'm obviously looking for you-know-what, but I couldn't really find any. I was hoping to see some spines, and because they had over like 300 games on the 360, I thought there's bound to be at least one promotional copy in this store. And as I was getting to the last bay, I actually really started to lose hope. And you can see that I picked up a game. It's Mafia II. This isn't a promo copy. I don't know if it even has one, but Mafia II is one of the best games, not just on the Xbox 360, but it's one of the best games I have ever played. And I don't own it. Well, I didn't, because now I do. £4 is not an awful lot of money to spend on this game, and I absolutely adore it. I can't really tell you what I like about it. I guess it's a combination of the gameplay itself, but the time period that it's set in. I just think it's a fantastic game, and if you haven't played any of the Mafia games in general, but in particular Mafia 2, you absolutely have to. This one does come with the manual and the map. The map unfortunately has seen better days, so that may end up going up on the wall, and I may pick up another one of these at some point with a better map that I can sort of keep for collection purposes. I wouldn't say it's in bits or anything, but it's been folded back incorrectly. It's very worn. This whole thing is a bit of a mess. So only £4 spent. Now I did spend voucher, and I spent a lot of voucher in this store. I wasn't expecting to spend as much as I did, but the games just kept coming. So as I say, they kept coming, and it didn't actually happen until the very final bay, and that's where it's easier to spot certain things. So again, I'm flicking through here and I'm trying to find, you know what, I don't know half the games that exist in promo copies, but then I get to the next one, and this is Star Wars Force Unleashed 2 promotional copy for just £5. So you know I had to pick it up. The first promotional copy I found in the Swindon CEX store. It's not a game that I overly wanted, if I'm honest. However, I'm going to try and pick up as many promotional copies as I can, with the odd exception here or there, Dance Central and things like that. I'm not really too bothered about like the Connect games, but when it comes to actual games that you can sit down and play without having to dance around like a lunatic, I'm all for it. Don't know whether this was meant to come with an actual promotional disc or just a normal disc. I don't want to question staff members, although potentially maybe I should. So that was the first promotional copy. Unlike buses, I saw another one almost immediately. This is the Worms collection. Now this one is £15, but again, it is a promotional copy. Did I buy it or did I leave it there because I thought it was maybe too much? I bought it, have to. If I see a promo copy and it's under that 50 quid mark, I'm going to have to buy it. To be honest, even if it's 50 quid, I'm probably going to buy it if I have the credit. And on this occasion, of course, we have the credit. So yeah, why not? Now, I actually really like Worms, which is quite fortunate. It's one of those really fun but relaxing games. And of course, it's very multiplayer, so you can play it with other people. But it's also a lot of fun to play by yourself. Now, 15 quid for this does seem a little bit on the steep side. And it has gone up over the last week or two. I think it was 12 not that long ago. However, all of the Xbox 360 games that I can see anyway are creeping up in price for the most part. And much like the Star Wars game, it is a normal copy of the disc. This one had to be run through a disc cleaner, and if I'm honest, does have a couple of scratches that I'm not too confident of. So I am going to give this a go soon, and then I'll have to take it back if it doesn't work. Now, when I say take it back, I'm not giving up the case. If they want to swap out the disc with another one, they absolutely can. If they don't have it and all they can do is offer me the voucher back or the refund, I'd rather keep it and pick this disc up at a later date, but keep the case, because the case to me, believe it or not, is just as valuable as the game is. When it comes to promo copies, of course. I do have another game to show you. Well, actually, I do have another 2 games to show you. As I went to the till, and I'm waiting for the staff member to get the games for me, I'm sort of looking around a little bit as I do, and on the floor, there is a stack of games. Not just Xbox 360, there's some other games stacked on top of it, but at the very bottom of the pile, I noticed something. An Xbox 360 case, and a little yellow strip sticking off the case. Now, what does that indicate? Well, it indicates to me promotional copy. So I was like, hey, sorry to be a massive pain in the arse here, but can you tell me what that game is? The game was Injustice. Is this a good game? I don't really think it's that great, if I'm honest, but it was a promotional copy. Now, that's why it doesn't have a price on it, because it hadn't been stickered yet. This had literally just been traded in that day, and it had been sort of half processed and stuck on the floor. The label was printed off but hadn't been stuck on the game yet. This was just £2. And this is curious because this does have the promotional disc, which is interesting for a reason I'll talk about after I show you the next game. That's another promo game to go into the collection. That makes 3 for this trip. However, I wasn't done because yes, I found another one. Before I get to that other one though, which is actually, I wouldn't say a big hitter necessarily, but it's a game that I'm not necessarily that fond of, if I'm honest. I don't know an awful lot about it. However, it's a game that I knew I had to pick up at some point. Split Second is a game that I want. It's very much in the same vein as Blur. I actually preferred Split Second first time round when I played it over Blur, but the case was just that little bit too battered, so I decided to leave it alone. Having looked here to see, like in the footage, to see, you know, what we're going through and stuff, I think there was another copy of Split Second further down. I'm not sure whether it was or whether it wasn't. Maybe I'll give you a freeze frame. I don't know whether it was a promotional copy of Split Second as well, actually. It might not even be. Two Worlds there, Two Worlds 2, which is not a game that you see that often. It is Split Second. I'm just looking off to the left there, just to the left of my hand, and there is another copy of Split Second. Had it been in good condition, maybe I would have bought it, maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. I've been looking for it for a little while, to be fair. My local CEX has just had one in, but it's not on the shop floor, so I don't know what's going on with it, but I don't know whether they did. I think they did a promotional copy of Split Second. I don't know whether that was one on the shelf or not. However, what they do have a promotional copy of is this. This is the Ultimate Alliance 2. Now, I'm not a massive Marvel fan. However, as it's a promo copy, I absolutely had to buy it. This was the only Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 game that they had in stock. Why is that important? It might not be. However, it comes with a promotional disc. Now, what that means to me is that there's no way the member of staff can give me the wrong disc, because there's only one of them. Injustice was on the floor with the disc with it, so there was no chance to cock that one up. But they did have more than one copy of these two, which does make me wonder, are there now promotional discs of these games in the Swindon CEX store that are now going to be paired with normal copies of Worms Collection and Force Unleashed 2? Answer, I don't know. Theory, yeah, probably. See, a lot of staff will have expertise in certain areas. Some don't know what Mega Drive games are, believe it or not. Others know an awful lot about the Mega Drive. Some won't know what 360 games are to a certain extent, some won't care. And a lot of them won't really care about which disc belongs with which game, so long as it's the actual game disc. Now, for me personally, I don't care whether that's a promotional disc or not, but there are an awful lot of people out there who won't be happy to have a promo disc with a normal copy of the game. And I've said this before, and a lot of people do agree with me. Some other people just don't see the point of caring about it, and I do understand that, but I almost feel like if you're selling these games, you need to have a duty of care. I don't even know if that's the correct term, but you need to make sure that the correct disc is going with the correct case, and I don't think it's my responsibility to be pointing out that, hey, that might not be the right disc, because for all I know, there isn't a promo copy of this disc. They made a promo case, but they didn't make a promo disc. Maybe that is the disc that's meant to be with it. I don't want to be a dick and say, hey, is that the right disc? And that's why I don't ever say anything. Maybe I should, maybe it is my responsibility, I don't know. So looking back here, that Split Second that I've pointed out may very well be a promo copy of Split Second, because if I compare it side by side with the other copy, it's not as dark, not as rich. It is a little bit faded. I don't know whether that means it's going to be the promo copy, whether it's been sun faded or damaged or something, but I do know that I completely missed it and didn't even look at it, which is definitely my bad. Now, another game that I completely missed was this right here. This is Wolfenstein on the Xbox 360. This is just Wolfenstein, there's no other title to it. This was released in 2009. I really like this game. It's only £8, which I think has come down slightly. I think it was 10 at one point. I have not seen this in my local CEX for, I don't know, well over 6 months at this point, maybe even longer. I saw it a couple of times and I thought maybe I'd pick it up at some point and just never did, and then it went and hasn't come back. And I'm a little bit miffed that I didn't see it there, because I probably would have bought it. Now, I spent £41 of credit here, and of course the other day I spent £22 of credit, so I have spent £63 of the credit in a couple of days. I'm really happy with the promo games I've managed to add to the collection, so the promo collection itself is actually building out quite nicely, but it does put us down on credit slightly. Now, I have got a couple of other things coming from Vinted, which is going to boost it ever so slightly, and I do mean ever so slightly because it's not a big boost, but there is a bit of a twist to it. It's a bit different, but you'll have to wait until they actually arrive, because of course they're not here yet. But the cash is still looking healthy in the series, and that's one of the most important things. But I do love being able to walk into CEX, even if I have no money in my pocket whatsoever. I love being able to walk into CEX knowing I have voucher on voucher that I can spend, and I pick up whatever I want. I don't really need to look at the price tag although I do. I know I'm very heavily focused on Xbox 360 right now, but I have added a PS4 game as well as a PlayStation 5 game in this episode, and there are a few PlayStation 5 games that I'm really looking for at the moment. They're not expensive by any stretch, but I do really want them in the collection. If I find them, I will absolutely spend the credit on them. I do need to focus on trying to build that credit back up again though, because we're down, as you can see by the figures on screen. Let me know how you've got on recently with games that you've picked up and the collections that you're building. If you want to check out another video that I made recently, you can click here, and until the next time, goodbye.